Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Media Freedom Rapid Response interview series, Media Freedom in Focus. Media Freedom Rapid Response, or MFRR in short, is a consortium of press freedom organizations that track, monitor, and document and react on press freedom violations across the European Union member states and candidate countries. My name is Teona Sekhniashvili. I'm Europe Network and Advocacy Officer at the International Press Institute, which is a global media freedom organization based in Vienna, Austria, and IPI is also part of the MFRR consortium. So today we are shining a spotlight on Georgia, where crucial parliamentary elections were held on October 26th. And while the ruling Georgian Dream Party secured victory in these elections, many organizations internally and externally point at a high number of violations that occurred during the elections. Among those violations are also press freedom violations, which we will be diving into today. But before that, I just wanted to note that before elections, in the beginning of October, partner organizations of Council of Europe's Platform for Safety of Journalists and of the Media Freedom Rapid Response concluded a fact-finding mission in Georgia. And some of the headline findings of the mission and the mission report itself is that the partner organizations witnessed the deterioration of press freedom in the country amid rising authoritarianism, and it has been made clear to them that a wide range of tools and mechanisms are used to discredit and curtail dissenting voices, including those of independent journalists. The mission also concluded that journalism became a dangerous profession in Georgia. So today we will be, as I said, diving into the press freedom environment and media environment during the elections, but we will be also discussing the environment in the pre-election period briefly. And to discuss this, I'm happy to be joined by Lika Chakhunashvili, who is the Executive Director of the Georgian Charter of Journalistic Ethics, which is an independent union of journalists and is the only independent regulatory body in Georgia for journalists. So, Lika, thank you very much for joining us today to discuss the press freedom violations during elections in Georgia.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to your audience.
Thank you. So without further ado, I'll ask you my first question. Your organization has documented dozens of cases of media freedom violations during the election. And I wanted to ask you if you could outline the most concerning cases and highlight some of the key trends related to journalists' rights being compromised during the parliamentary elections.
Elections have been rigged in Georgia before too, but what was different this time was the scale, and also how much effort and how much planning went to it. As our president referred to it, it was a Russian special operation. The entire state apparatus has acted as a criminal syndicate, making all its infrastructure and resources available to ruling party, and it all started months before the election day, and it involved a lot of different organizations, starting from kindergartens to ministries and security services, and it was a massive operation, and during which a lot of different methods were used, and some of those methods were know-how for this election. Journalists and observers have been mistreated during elections in Georgia before too, but again, this time what was alarming was scale, and that those were not separate incidents, but everything was very systemic. It was clear that they were following some kind of workbook. We have documented up to 50 cases involving 72 journalists and cameramen, and it is possible that we have missed some cases, but the number shows that it was massive, and this has happened everywhere, in Tbilisi, in the center, in suburbs, in different regional cities and villages. There were the nature of incidents was so similar across the polling stations and across the geographic locations that it is obvious that it was not just accidental. To categorize which kind of difficulties journalists have encountered, the entire environment during the election day was very toxic. It was highly risky for journalists to perform their professional duties. They were targets of aggression from everyone, from all parties involved in the electoral process, from commission members at the polling stations, from party representatives of Georgian Dream at the polling stations, from so-called observers, from government-friendly NGOs, fake observers who were there. And this was within the polling station, and also outside polling stations, outside every single polling station, there was a group of men stationed, of people with a criminal mentality, as we can judge by the wording they used and the way they behaved. Many of them were not even sober. They were drunk and they were very aggressive. And that was also part of the effort from the Georgian Dream government to control free will of voters. Everyone, voters, observers, journalists, were mistreated by this group of people. Besides these groups of men, highly aggressive men, most outside polling stations, there were also minibuses which were turned into some kind of Georgian Dream offices, who were inventorying people who were coming to the polling station and pressuring them. So journalists had to work in very hostile environment with a lot of unauthorized people being stationed around polling stations contrary to the law. And if we start from description of abuses, journalists were verbally assaulted, and that also was nothing new for journalists. It happens to journalists in Georgia all the time, but this time the difference was the words they used. Alongside with obscenities, they also referred to them as enemies of people, as agents, as people who are not patriots, and that also echoes. This is a result of so-called loan agents, to which we refer as Russian law, being reintroduced in Georgia this year, goal of which was to stigmatize and smear journalists, and we saw results of this during elections. These people were not just aggressive verbally, but they were aggressive also in a physical sense. They were pushing journalists, their equipment, their cameras, their microphones. Very often journalists were not allowed to observe voting process in the polling station. Some commission members did not even know the rights of journalists there, and they were trying to expel journalists from the polling stations. And these people were getting especially aggressive when journalists were documenting violations. They wanted to hide different methods they used to rig elections from cameras, and that's why they were very aggressive towards journalists, and that's why they tried to damage their equipment, to stole, not like it, to take away their equipment, and the journalists had to chase these people to get their phones and their cameras back, and journalists also, there were different types of pressure applied. Some journalists and their family members, even parents, received calls from some people close to Georgian Dream who insisted that journalists delete videos and photos from their phones. There were a lot of different ways used to prevent journalists from doing their work, starting from verbal abuse to physical force applied towards them to push them from the polling stations.
Thank you, Leah. And if I may ask, what implications do you believe the election results will have for press freedom in the country? You mentioned this Russian-style foreign agent law, officially called Law on Transparency of Foreign Influence, which was enacted, but not fully implemented yet. And some people have an expectation that it might be implemented exactly after elections. And many also consider exile because of it. So what changes do you expect for the state of press freedom in Georgia in the months ahead?
We found ourselves in very difficult situation for which we were not fully prepared. Honestly, just before elections, we were thinking, of course, Georgian Dream will not will not give power so easily to winners. But we did not expect the scale which I described, and we are still thinking and trying to figure out what to do next. But one thing is clear, that if Georgian Dream is allowed to take the power, and by the way, they have not yet, because the parliament has not resumed its first meeting. And as you know, for opposition parties who were also elected, they don't plan to join Georgian Dream in the parliament. So we consider that Georgian Dream has usurped the power. The elections are illegitimate. We don't recognize its results. Political parties do not recognize its results, and we civil society organizations, now what we're doing together with opposition parties is that we're collecting evidence to present to international organizations, bodies, different missions to prove that election results were falsified, and this was systemic and very widespread. And there were a number of violations, types of violations, which can have direct impact on the outcome of elections. So our goal now is to document everything, and then we are asking the government to schedule extraordinary elections, new elections, and which will be conducted not by Georgian authorities, whom we don't trust, but rather some kind of international mission under international supervision. So we see ourselves in this fight. If when we were discussing lone agents, civil society took the lead in protesting it and in communicating about the difficulties which the law would create for civil society and media to international community. This time it is up to political parties up to those who voters have entrusted with their votes, and they now need to lead the process. As I understand, they are working in three directions. One is that they are talking to international partners about situation in Georgia to make sure that no Western democracy recognizes these elections and as legitimate based on the evidence which we're collecting now to present to international partners. And in parallel, we will be increasing pressure on government, internal pressures through different demonstrations and different protest rallies, because
Thank you.
you know, if we don't resist now, that will be end of free media, free civil society, and the Georgia as a country as we know it now.
Thank you very much, Leah. My final question, which you have to some extent already responded to, I wanted to ask, what are your personal plans and plans of your organization if the ruling Georgian Dream Party stays in power, and if then foreign agent law is implemented? What are you going to do? As I mentioned that some are considering exile. I mentioned that the decline in press freedom was very rapid, and things might not change in this regard. So what are your plans?
Yeah, we can talk about long-term plans and short-term plans. I described our short-term plans. Is that we as an organization, we will work until we are allowed to work. As you know, government can start implementation of lone foreign agents anytime, and if they come to us and they shut down our organization because we decline to register as foreign agents, and we will not do it because it's absolute insult to our dignity and to whatever we work for and strive to achieve. Yeah, if they shut us down, then we will continue individually to work until we are physically allowed to do so. We do not consider work from exile because we are an organization which is deeply rooted in local reality. We are intermediary between journalists and media consumers. Our major mission is to review complaints from media users about the breach of professional standard, and by doing so we improve quality of journalism and in media community and media literacy among media consumers. And we do not imagine working as we have worked until now from exile. Yeah, all our hope is that there will be snap parliamentary elections, and those will be conducted more fairly and transparently, and we will be able to bring Georgia back to normal.
Thank you very much, Leah. Lika Chakhunashvili of the Georgian Charter of Journalistic Ethics was our guest today. And thank you to our listeners.